When you say mafia, every time I see two guys kissing, I know one of them's going to die.
The mafia? What mafia? I don't know anything about any mafia. They've got to get a lot more aggressive. Forget all these complaints about murders and death and violence. I mean, go back to the way it was. We need a few dead horse heads in the beds of some rivals. They've become wimps over the years. They keep running off and whispering stories about their exploits to the federal government, not doing them the slightest bit of good.
Do you think that the mafia is kind of losing its glamour, its touch, its allure?
No, it gained allure and glamour, and that's what ruined it.
I'm Judy Licht.
Hi, I'm Jerry Della Femina, and welcome to the Judy and Jerry Show. You know, Judy, when I was a kid living in Gravesend, I was alone in my house with my grandmother, and I said the word mafia. And my grandmother slapped me in the face, and she said, "Don't say that." And I said, "Grandma, we're all alone. There's nobody here." She said, "They're everywhere." And that's what it was like in Gravesend and Avenue. You didn't talk about the mafia or sex. In fact, you talked about sex before you talked about the mafia.
Now, if she were alive today, what do you think she'd say?
My grandmother today would say, "A bunch of wimps. They're all part of the federal protection program. I don't want to have anything to do with them." She would say that in Italian because she never learned to speak English. She didn't think the country was going to work out.
But, you know, what is going on with the mafia, Jerry? I mean, it seems to me they have more singers than the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. They can't get their act together.
The mafia's in trouble. The mafia's in trouble. I mean, not with the feds. The mafia's in trouble because they're like a big corporation that the leadership is getting old. They really need that. And, I mean, they don't have a lot. They have competition coming in from everywhere. And the biggest problem with the mafia right now is they don't have a logo. They used to have the black hand. That was big. They lost their black hand. What they need really is to go to a good designer. Give us a new logo.
All right, that sounds like a good idea to me. Well, anyway, tonight we're going to take an inside but kind of irreverent look at the mafia. And with us are two guests who know about as much about the mafia as anyone. Peter Moss probably single-handedly did more to bring down the mob than anyone. In his story, his real-life Mafia Insider book, Valachi Papers, he helped turn the government's witness program into the social register for wayward mobsters. And Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Jimmy Breslin told us about the other side of life in the organization when he wrote The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight, which is a hilarious look at the Gallo family. Thanks for coming, gentlemen.
Thank you. Great being here.
Yeah.
Peter, did Joe Valachi turn the witness protection program into this great big federal handout? I mean, was he the guy who started it all?
Well, when he talked, he was the first one. That was the beginning of the end for the Mafia as this great, powerful organization in everybody's mind. Because up until then, they had omerta, secrecy. He was the first one to talk. And after all these years, he was the first one to talk. He gave us all these things we know, the families, the capo di tutti capi, and all the names, all the nomenclature that we know about today. And he was like, I think, Roger Bannister. He was the Englishman who broke the 4-minute mile. For 100 years, people were trying to break the 4-minute mile, and finally he does. And the next year, 6 more guys broke it. So you needed the first one. And after Valachi, the whole stream still going on, started talking too. And as a matter of fact, when Valachi first started, there was no federal witness protection program. They had to invent one afterwards because so many people were lined up. And really, it's like a giant literary agency, because the first thing you do is you tell them that you're going to talk, and then the next thing you're called by people in the federal government saying, "Would you like this guy's story?" And they sell it.
They get an agent that's fast.
They get agents.
It's nice they find work. I mean, that's very
thoughtful. It really
thoughtful.
is a great literary agency. But he was the first one to do it. At the time he talked, when I tried to sell the Valachi Papers as a book, 26 publishers in New York turned it down, one right after the other. They said the Mafia didn't sell.
Oh.
And, you know, I thought I was writing a definitive history of the Mafia. I didn't realize I was creating a new industry in
Jimmy,
the publishing world.
and it has spawned a whole side effect. Jimmy, when you wrote about the Gallo family, you really made them look for the first time like a group of bumbling fools.
Well, that's what it always has been. I have never seen it as such a great organization. I mistrust the amount of money they supposedly made. That's what.
You don't believe their spreadsheets?
I never saw that much money. I remember there was a fellow, Miranda, lived on Greenway North in Forest Hills, and he died. And the house was up for sale. And my wife at the time, we lived around the corner. So she said, I'm going to take a look. Maybe we'll get lucky with a low price or something. Let me look. She came out crestfallen. But he made it look like a nightclub, and you didn't have the money to turn it into a house. There wasn't that much money there. And he was supposed to be a big boss. And I think they're now going to have a lot of trouble from the people coming in from other countries. I'll tell you a story. I went to Moscow, Russia. I never was there in my life. I sound like a traveler. And a guy in a bar told me we're in a place where they put Russian bureaucrats, right. A hotel. He said, don't get in the government there if that's how they live. But we were there. And they had a bar downstairs that took only dollars, only American money. They didn't want their own money. So I had a drink, and the guy told me that there's some gangsters. We got gangsters here now, he's telling me. Where? So he said, over in the International Hotel. So I go over to this hotel. You go up on the top floor, and there, as I am here, is the music from The Godfather coming out of the Japanese restaurant, piped out, and sitting inside are guys with black shirts, white ties, and striped suits. I thought it was like a nightclub act, but it was real. They were real guys. So I said, how are you, fellas? And they
reached for their
grunted.
guns.
No, they grunted. I says, I can't do anything for you. I get you a picture of John Gotti for the wall. I'll have him sign it for you. They knew that name a little bit. There was a fellow there, Vasily Diamond was the boss, and they were having a fight because they lived the old way. You're not to marry. You're not to ever take a job. You're never to have any family. You're to be a criminal. That's your job, a professional criminal. Don't ever do anything else but that. And that was their code. And now they've come over here to Brighton Beach, and I guess they get into other things, and they're breaking that code, but they're immigrants in crime, and always in this city, immigrants control the crime before they control their own politics. And therefore, I think the Mafia, middle-aged, heavy guys sitting down at dinner, 11 strong, no girls. Everybody eats dinner and goes home. I think their days are numbered. They're gone. Yeah,
no wonder they do bad things.
I think they're gone.
But he's right. Every new ethnic group that comes, that's the first thing they do. The Italian Mafia it's finished pretty much. Really? And again, that's the one thing. That's why the Russians were so, and the Israelis, and every ethnic group. It's the Russian Mafia, the Israeli Mafia, the Jamaican Mafia. At least the brand name is there because it had this secrecy and this kind of mystique. And they are, as Jimmy says, they weren't so smart, really. That's a big. They were pretty dumb.
Okay.
Speaking of
the
dumb,
guy said to me, we went to White Plains. They had they 20 and 30 at a time get indicted here now. There's no more. And there were so many of them in the courtroom.
Rico was the end of everything.
There were so many of them in the courtroom that they couldn't sit at the defense table. They had to be scattered through the audience. So one of them, Joe Zito, was sitting next to me. So I was standing, waiting for the day to start. So he goes, when they call my name, you stand up. So he says, go to the last hope that maybe they'll overlook him. But that kind of humor is gone now. I mean, with these fellas, it's gone. And now, I don't know, you're going to have, I don't know. I guess some of the Chinese gangs have their own humor, but it escapes me.
We're going to find out.
We'll be back with the Chinese gang and with a lot of other gangs.
And whether or not the Mafia can make a comeback, in their opinion, right after this. Stay with us.
The Mafia should downsize.
They're not equal opportunity employers, which I think is a real problem today.
I think they should bring in more Jews.
What I wouldn't do is recruit more kids from Sicily who are uneducated in the ways of white-collar crime, the ways of computers, and of hiding and laundering money. I would go and recruit people on Wall Street.
We're back talking about the Mafia. Of course, that was Ken Auletta who was giving his opinion on one way to fix the Mafia. Everybody had a different suggestion. Now, Jimmy Breslin, Peter Maas, you're the experts in a way. I mean, how are we going to fix the Mafia?
Oh, how to bring them back? I mean, first of all, let's find out, is there any difference between the old Mafia and today's Mafia?
Well, I tell you, except that they're dumb and that they're not sophisticated. For years, the government's been saying it'll infiltrate and take over all the businesses of America, which they'll never be able to do. But there is a difference.